Today I want to talk to you about ATP, which is also known as the Universal Energy Molecule. Firstly though, I want to think about what is actually meant by the term energy. So energy is defined as the ability to do work. Now that definition of work is found in a number of important processes in our bodies. So here we have a list of 6 very important processes in our bodies, all requiring energy. The first is metabolism, which is a series of chemical reactions that we need to carry out in order to function properly. The second is movement, such as muscle contraction. The third is the process of active transport, which is the movement of molecules against a concentration gradient, which we'll come on to in the unit when we talk about cells. The fourth is cell maintenance and repair. The fifth is the production of substances such as hormones or antibodies. And the sixth is the maintenance of body temperature. So what actually is ATP? Well, ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. Now, looking at the diagram here, you can see that it looks very similar to a nucleotide that we find in DNA or RNA. Now, I'm going to highlight now the key differences and similarities between the two molecules. So you can see here that you have a nitrogenous base, adenine, which is found in DNA and RNA. We have a ribose sugar, which is found in RNA. And we have these inorganic phosphates. Now, unlike DNA and RNA, which only have one phosphate per nucleotide, you can see here that ATP has 3 phosphates per nucleotide, hence the name triphosphate. Now you can begin to see why ATP is called a nucleotide derivative, because it's very similar to nucleotide bases. ATP is a very important molecule because it's the immediate energy source for every cellular process that occurs. So how do we actually release this energy contained within this ATP molecule? Well, there's a reaction that occurs using the enzyme ATP hydrolase, and as the name suggests, you can guess that the enzyme itself hydrolyzes this bond. Now what it does, it hydrolyzes the bond between the second and the third inorganic phosphate. When this bond is broken, that releases energy. But what are the products of the reaction? Well, you can see, when the bond is broken, you form a molecule called ADP, which is adenosine diphosphate, which is obviously the ATP minus 1 phosphate molecule. And also, because you've broke that bond, you've also got an inorganic phosphate released. So you can see here that that's the end of the products of the reaction. ATP and the energy it produces is directly channeled into the reaction that needs the energy. So we say that the hydrolysis reaction and the process or the reaction that needs the energy are coupled together. So we now have our energy produced for our reaction, and this is essential in a lot of processes in our bodies. But what happens to the actual products of the reaction? So what actually happens to the ADP? And the inorganic phosphate? The first thing that can happen is the phosphate group itself can be used to phosphorylate other molecules. Phosphorylation, as you will come across in A2, is a very important process because a lot of enzymes and other molecules need to be phosphorylated before they become activated. An example is during respiration. Glucose must be phosphorylated before it will be used in the body. The second use of the products of the reaction are resynthesizing ATP. So you can see here that the ADP and the phosphate molecule can actually be rejoined back together again, and we reform ATP. Now we need a different enzyme, so we've already used ATP hydrolase to break down the bond. However, we use another molecule called ATP synthase to reform that bond. Now, as you may have guessed, because we produced energy when we broke that bond, we actually need energy now to reform that bond. So when we reform or resynthesize ATP from ADP and inorganic phosphate, we need energy for that reaction to occur. So you can see here, it is actually a reversible reaction, and ATP hydrolase acts in the forward direction and synthase acts in the reverse direction. Well, we've talked about what we use ATP for, so what are the advantages of actually having this ATP instant energy molecule? Well, the first advantage is that the energy that we produce is released in very small bursts, which is a good thing in certain cellular processes because they don't need a lot of energy, they just need small amounts of energy fairly regularly. The second is we can produce the energy. So when we break down the ATP to ADP and inorganic phosphate, it's a single reaction. You can see on the left-hand side, it is just one step in the forward direction. It's one reaction. However, in the process of respiration, which also produces ATP, and you'll come across this in A2, it's a long process with a sequence of reactions. So this process, where we're forming the energy using ATP, is a lot simpler and a lot quicker. Because it's quicker, we say ATP is an instant source of energy. And because it's only a small molecule, it's mobile, and it can be transported around the cell to where the cell actually needs it. The last thing is we say it's a universal energy carrier, which means that it's actually found in all eukaryotes and prokaryotes. So bacteria also use ATP as an energy molecule as well. So that's the end of the lesson on ATP. Just make sure that you fill out your booklets, and when you get to the end of the booklet, make sure you've got the advantages of ATP because it does come up fairly often in 4-mark questions, and you do need to know about these advantages, so the advantages are here. Thank you.